Welcome to the Lemonade Stand Stories podcast. Tune in every Thursday as we share inspirational stories from the world's greatest creators, entrepreneurs, and go-getters about how they've turned life's lemons into lemonade. And now, here's your host of Lemonade Stand Stories, Charan Prabhakar.
What is going on, guys? This is Charan Prabhakar with the Lemonade Stand Stories podcast, and today I'm here with an actual legend. In fact, I'm surprised that legends can't really come to life in real life, they say, but apparently Dave Austin is here, and he's here to prove me wrong. So it's going to be
I'm going to prove you wrong that I'm a legend. I think.
I think you are. No,
listen, in my own mind.
Listen, here's the thing. I got to tell you guys all how I met Dave, or the first time I had an interaction with Dave, because you weren't even. I don't even think we knew each other officially then. But I'd heard your name around a little bit. Because I had produced a movie called Alien Country, and Boston and Rennie, Boston is the director, producer, Rennie is the producer, actress of the film, had been talking about you nonstop. And they were like, oh, our coach, Dave Austin, he's been like really instrumental in helping us get this film off the ground. And I'm like, thank goodness, because I definitely couldn't do it. And then our other dear friend, Rachel Brooks Smith, who is also in the movie, had also started talking about you. I'm like, who is this Dave Austin guy? And then I think it was our first day of filming, you had shown up and you'd kind of given us all this visualization exercise, right?
It's a game ready. I call it game ready. It's what I do with Olympic teams. It's what I do with the NFL, Major League Baseball, PGA golf, pro tennis. You know, before you go and compete or do anything,
yes,
you want to be grounded, and we call it the state of flow. So I said, hey, let's do it for the whole cast. Let's take it on.
Dude, I love it. You know what? And it's so exciting. So in case you guys haven't known, like Dave works a lot with professional athletes. He's a professional athlete himself. He schooled me in tennis to prove it. I'm like, thank you, Dave, for that lesson in humility. But it was great because you're I would say you're basically like a mental high performance coach, right?
You nailed it.
Right?
A high
for
performance mental coach. Exactly.
Yeah, for like some amazing athletes all over the world. You've coached NFL athletes, NBA athletes, tennis stars, and the biggest thing is you released a series. Well, actually, it hasn't come out yet, right?
It hasn't come out yet.
It hasn't come out yet.
Yeah, you got a sneak preview.
I know. I got a sneak preview. I was very excited, and it's called Moonshots. You guys have to check it out because Moonshots, like right when I started watching the first episode, I was hooked. And I remember being like, okay, this is epic. And Dave's got amazing stories. So I'm going to just shut up right now so I can have Dave tell me all the stories. But first off, thank you so much for even entertaining to come on this podcast and to kind of share your wisdom with us. This whole podcast, just so you have a background, is all about helping the future generation of entrepreneurs, creators, athletes, having that type of mindset, right? To get to that next level, to be able to go past their struggles, their hardships, and go to the next phase. So I'm super stoked to have someone like you come on and to give us some education on what you've done to ground athletes, movie stars, yada, yada, yada,
yeah.
Right?
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm honored to be here. I'm glad. I love your energy. You're fun to be around. Man. You know, when you said, hey, come on the show, I'm going, absolutely, you know.
Yes.
Let's do it. Let's see what we can do.
No, I love it. And I want to kind of like just start from the beginnings because that's all about the Lemonade Stand Stories, right? So how did you decide? Because even from the first beginning of Moonshots, when you start talking about going for your dreams, and that seems kind of a cliche thing to do. He's like, oh yeah, go for your dreams. But then you give like a very systematic approach of like, no, there's an actual science to going for your dreams. So how did this all come about? Like, how did you decide you want to do this stuff?
Well, you know, believe it or not, it started when I was 10.
Okay.
10 years old. My dad was a Navy chaplain, so that means we moved every 2 or 3 years, and I was a good athlete. I was a gifted athlete, and I loved competing. So, but every time we moved, I had to reprove myself. And so, you know, I was in Southern California, and I was a superstar in football and baseball, you know, and a run for touchdowns. Then we moved to North Carolina, and I had a sergeant as a coach on the first day of football practice. He goes, Austin, you're slow as molasses. I went, oh, gosh, I am. Because, you know, back then as a kid, you're letting the world tell you who you are rather than you telling the world who you are. So I'm like, oh, my God, who's going to catch me? I didn't know I was slow. Yeah. I became slow because my whole belief system about who I was changed. So I found it fascinating. My dad got stationed in Hawaii, and the first day of football practice, coaches didn't say it to me, but I overheard the coaches saying, hey, that Austin kid, he's kind of quick. I went, oh, thank you, God. I don't know why, but I'm quick again.
Yeah.
And I shed the weight that I had put on because of how I looked at myself. And all of a sudden, I started being the star again. And I thought, there's something to this whole mindset thing. So it's just part of something I looked at through life as I went on. And then I went to college on a football, baseball scholarship, but then got in a horrendous car accident between my freshman and sophomore year. And believe it or not, I transferred colleges and was a walk-on in tennis because I was using tennis to learn how to walk again and learn how to run
because didn't the
again.
doctors say you weren't able to walk again?
Well, that's a whole miracle type story.
Yeah.
That's a do miracles happen today or did they just happen 2 years ago? No, I got the hands touched on me, and I'm blessed that I could walk or I could run. But it was when you can't walk or run for a while, it's really interesting to try to learn how to do it again.
Yeah.
I started playing tennis, and then I just was so passionate about it that I was a walk-on at San Diego State, a D1 school. That's kind of crazy, but I just kind of always went for things. And I say that I lost my way to winning, learned with every step I took to where I was able to be, eventually go out and go on the pro tour, get a world ranking. I got the chance to play some of the greatest players of all time. So I feel blessed. I also get to see the world at a very young age, and that's really educational. Yeah. I always kind of live life with my eyes wide open. Most of the times, we might be in here, but I just really enjoy the aspect of what makes us tick. Yeah. And so, I do have a degree in psychology, but this goes way beyond my degrees. Now, I've been doing this for 30 years now of coaching athletes. Then it's turned into CEOs. I've done Navy SEALs. I've done Army Rangers. I've done the Pentagon. I've spoken at the UN, spoken at Harvard, because your mind is your greatest asset you have. Yeah. And most of the time it gets in our way, right? Get it to work for you rather than against you. Most of the time, many times it's working against us. So I just, over the course of study and time and just doing, it's like, with tennis, if I hit a backhand, I go, oh, now I've got it. But if I stop, it stays,
in that same spot. Yeah.
So I work it and get it better and better and better. And you have to keep doing that with your mind too. So I just kept really diving in deeper and deeper. And then, I was asked to do the U.S. Olympic team to the World Cup, and on the plane over the Atlantic Ocean, 39,000 feet. God, what do you have for me? I want to have more impact. I want to give more than I have right now. And the Game Ready came to me on that flight.
Wow.
We ended up having the best results ever in the history of their sport. I came back from that. I called a friend of mine who was the pitching coach for the Dodgers. And I said, hey, Jim, you wouldn't believe what just happened. This whole thing came to me, divine wisdom. And he goes, oh, you got to come and work with our pitchers. So I went and did that, worked with the pitchers. And then Jim Tracy, who was the manager at the time, Jim Colburn was the pitching coach that mentioned my friend. But he goes, oh, man, we got to have you do it with the whole team. Mm-hmm. So it just really sparked me into getting involved in Major League Baseball. And then I started working with a player that was stuck in AAA. And then after working together, he became the hottest hitter in baseball that year. It was really amazing. The difference of, we have so many distractions in life, so many thoughts.
Yes.
So when you can find to narrow them down and really just focus on that which is important, simplify. Wow, the whole world opens up to you. Like, we played tennis the other day,
I was going
right?
to just say, yeah.
And you saw Ben Zobrist, who was the MVP for the World Series for the Cubs. And Ben's been wanting me to play with him forever. And I said, we got our shot. You've been wanting to play with me forever. Yeah. We got our shot. And so Ben's out there, well, how do you do this? How do you do that, right? And he didn't even have a concept. And I said, well, you just do this. I've never seen anybody pick up anything so quick.
It was embarrassing for me. I'm like, well, I'm going to keep blaming my broken back. But no, it was crazy to see how quickly he picked it up and just went with it.
Yeah, it was, but he was able to simplify. Most of the time, I can't get someone to do that quickly.
Yeah.
And then he goes, well, why do you think I was able to play 7 positions in baseball? He was the first utility player that showed that this was a very, very important role.
Yeah.
He was an all-star several times in that, but he played every position. It's crazy.
Yeah.
When I first met him, it was funny. He was playing for Tampa Bay, and I didn't know that much about him. I said, I said, so what position do you play? He said, well, I'm a utility player. So I'm thinking, okay, so he's on the bench most of the time.
Okay. Yeah.
And I said, so what's your biggest thing that you're really proud of this year? And he goes, I'm making the All-Stars. I'm going, wait a minute.
hang
Wait a
on.
minute.
Yeah,
I got something wrong here.
Yeah.
And then
So he's an All-Star bench player? This is crazy. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Dude, you know what? That's the thing though. Like you have this ability to like create a really positive mindset. I mean, even coaching me how to serve, right? Like you're like, Sharon, you're doing like a billion things that you shouldn't be doing. And I'm like, I know, like holding this racket for one. But no, you just said like, no, just like simplify it. And I did. And all of a sudden it was almost like clockwork. I'm like, oh my gosh. And when you have results that quickly, it suddenly completely boosters your confidence. And you're like, oh my gosh, I can do this more.
And here's the great news. Your mind for doing business or anything is no different. Yeah. We overcomplicate, overthink everything. I do the exact same thing that I do on the athletic field in the business world. And it's just amazing to watch, like you say, just the change is like, wow. For me, that's my biggest passion. It's my mission in life. God gave me this mission. I took some detours to get there, right? Part of it, Moonshots, you saw, I played professional tennis. Then I had a hit on the radio. I was acting in movies and television. It was just part of, and ran a record label with Universal. I had all these opportunities to keep expanding, but knowing that I was meant to do what I'm doing now, that I've been doing now for like over 20 years.
And it was cool because like for me, when I saw that, I was like, oh, he's taking the same principles he learned excelling in tennis and doing it in the record label and doing it with hanging out with George Clooney, for instance, and acting and whatnot, right? And it was just fun to hear those stories because it's like, oh, the same principles apply all across the board.
It's life. So I love what Henry David Thoreau did. Emerson had property on Walden Pond, and he says, I want to do an experiment. I want to just be in nature without any interference. Yes. So he asked Emerson if he could make a one-room, cabin, so to speak, right on Walden Pond, so he wouldn't experience anybody else. And he went there. He was there for 2 years, 2 months, 2 days. He had something about twos, and all his best stuff that he's written came from that, and allowing the divine God to kind of speak to him without any distractions. And one of the things that I love that he said is that if one wants confidently towards a goal in common hours, I don't know if I have all the right words, but anyway, you'll eventually come to an invisible barrier. And if you have the courage to step through the invisible barriers, new universal laws will be available to you. I've watched that happen. Jesus said, with the faith of a mustard seed, you can move a mountain. So I go, oh, there's a connection between those two. It's a different way of expressing it, but we have so many more gifts available to us, but we don't open to it. And there's a lot of reasons why. And all I do is help those that really have a passion, have a dream, find out how to take action, bold action behind it, and then stay the course. I spoke at the UN at the Global Summit, and that was one of the things they said, so how have all these businesses and these professional athletes become so successful with the way you work? And I wasn't planning this, but all of a sudden it's like divine took over. I went, I have a dream. Yeah. I'm like, is Martin Luther King in the room?
Yeah.
Oh, and then I said, but a dream without action means nothing. So how do we move towards that dream? And that's the key. Everyone has dreams, but how do we move towards it with a focused approach? And maybe sometimes we have to adapt and shift. Sure. That's part of life. But we want to keep moving forward in that vision. And everyone has that. But the key is the tools to get to your vision.
Well, let me ask you this. Speaking of like tools to get to your vision, some of the first episodes of Moonshots, you talk about manifesting, right? And how you manifested like a beachfront property. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm like, dang it, I need to go manifest that right now. But then you also talked about a concept that I really, really love, and I mentioned it to you, was Nobo, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about Nobo a little bit, because I really, really like that. And I think that that's something that a lot of people need to understand in order to help with their mindset.
Great question. Great topic. So, as you know, with the Be a Beast book that Roger Anthony and I wrote, we use animals to trigger you because, less thinking, but a trigger can just trigger us into right action. So if you've ever been out in the ocean and seen a flying fish, it's like crazy. Come on, a fish with wings? That's not even possible.
Yeah, I know.
You know, you see, and when we were on our honeymoon, Kathy and I, this is many moons ago, these flying fish were flying along. It was so cool to watch them. But wait a minute, they can't even breathe, and they should be down on the water. What's going on here?
Yeah.
And they'd fly for over a half mile. How's that possible? That's impossible, right?
Yeah.
But they found that, they were too slow to get away from being eaten, and they developed wings and they flew. So we call the fish, the flying fish, Nobo. No box, no boundary. If you think that I'm going to think outside the box. Well, that means you think there's a box. Blow up the freaking box. And so with many of my clients, I go, when we see something that's going to be challenging, we go, okay, we need to go to Nobo land, where we just go free and open. And even if it's the dumbest idea in the world, we put it out there so it might spark the greatest idea in the world. But if we all get stopped with judgment. Oh,
yeah. He's
going to think I'm crazy if I say that.
Yeah.
But if you can just get past your judgment, then you're free to go to Noble Land.
Yes. And Noble Land is a wonderful place. Well, here's the thing, and I really like this. You said in order for us to get to Noble Land, you have to pass the judgment of others aside and the judgment that you have upon yourself aside. So how do you do that? Because here's the thing, like that's a tough thing to do, right? Here we are, like especially younger generations, like they're dealing with social media. They're constantly wondering, oh, what's this person going to think of me? Should I put this picture up? What are they going to say? And so you're constantly wondering, you're constantly like testing the waters. And in this world where right now it's like people are used to getting thousands of likes on a picture or something like that, constantly reinforcing that whole idea of like, I really need to care what other people think. So how do you get to Nobo Land?
It's a discipline. You'll learn how to do it and use Nobo. Just those words. Oh, it's awareness. Wait, by saying Nobo, I know I'm now aware. I don't want to fall into a conditional habit. The issue that you mentioned is we're all trying to prove ourselves. We're already whole and healthy, wherever we are. And if we can trust that and believe that, then we're free to fly, so to speak. Yeah. But when you're out constantly trying to prove yourself, it's an energy that's pushing your dreams away, actually.
You're chasing too hard, you know?
And so we got to be a little bit more receiving, and that just takes work. Even the top CEOs that I work with, they've got doubt, they've got fears, they've gotten to a certain point, but if they don't make a shift, they're going to stay right there. It might be already fairly successful, but there's many realms of true wealth. Wealth of money's part of it, just a part of it. But love, joy, family, those to me are more important. But the money is important still. I'm not saying it's not. Yeah. But that's what I call full wealth. But you've got to be able to be open to see. Most of the time we have these blind spots. I help people. I see the blind spots because I'm not emotionally attached to what they are. And then I can help them see things that they can't see for themselves. I have blind spots. I have, those that can tell me, hey, Dave, what was that about? I go, oh, I didn't even recognize it. Then I have to look at it and say, boy, where do I need to change that habit? But going back to Nobo, one of the things that I love this story, if it's all right.
Please.
I wrote one of the books I wrote was Songwriting for Dummies.
Okay. And
I was writing with Jim Peterick, who wrote 27 top 10 hits. Eye of the Tiger, every one of the hits, all these number one hits. And he was asked to work with Sammy Hagar. They both were hit songwriters. Their publishers put them together to write a song. And they got together and nothing happened for a half hour. Nothing. I mean, not a chord was struck, not a word was spoken. They're like frozen. And finally, Sammy Hagar goes, Jim, they saw that this just wasn't working. He goes, Jim, I just got to be honest with you. I know all your hits, and I'm afraid of looking dumb in front of you. And Jim goes, wow, well, I know all your hits, and I'm afraid of looking dumb in front of you. So they made an agreement. Just allow each other to be dumb. 30 minutes later, they wrote Sammy Hagar's biggest hit.
No way.
But see, it's part of it. It's an agreement. Like when you say, how do you do it? Even if I come in and I might say, in this one, I'm going to have to do a little Nobo thinking here, and it might come out dumb, but let's go there. Yeah. So you just come up with agreements if you need to do that to help you allow yourself to be like with those two gentlemen. They just agreed to be dumb, and they write his biggest hit. So
it's interesting, like that mentality. was kind of the way my acting class in LA was like. So I went to an acting class called the Acting Center, and their whole idea was there is no such thing as right or wrong. You know, their only requirement for everyone is that they commit 100%. It doesn't matter what the decision is, just commit 100%. And their whole approach was, we're not going to say if it's good or bad. You decide if this is good and if you're like happy with it. And when you're done, then you can be finished. But if not, you can keep going as long as you want.
Interesting.
And it was a very, very interesting approach. In fact, the very first day I was there, we had this kind of like an orientation thing where they would like introduce their whole methodology. Before that, we had all these actors like playing games with each other, and no one was judging each other. We're just like playing different acting games. And there was this guy in the corner that was like kind of clapping. He's like, good job, guys. You guys are doing awesome. And I kept looking at him. I'm like, that guy looks super familiar. But he's like, who I think it is? It was Tom Cruise.
Oh my God, really?
So Tom Cruise showed up in this acting class. He happened to be taking his adopted son to the class that exact day. And he sat in the orientation with us. And, you know, Tom Cruise was like saying like some good comments and stuff in this orientation. And I'm like, he's like sitting right in front of me, right? And I remember him saying certain things about like, listen, when the camera is going, you don't really have time to think of like, am I in character? Am I not? He's like, you just have to go.
Yeah.
You just got to go and you just got to go do it, right? And I really like that, because when things get under the gun, like I know, I mean, everyone does this. I know I do this, which is overthink. But one of the things I love to do is to snowboard. And when I'm going pretty fast and I'm going down a hill, I'm not thinking. I'm just going, you know? And it's almost this intuitive reaction, this state of flow takes over.
Yeah. Amen.
Where I just love being in that state. I'm like, oh my gosh. And you feel so alive as well.
Oh, so true.
Right?
So true. And, you know, it's like courage. You know, it's not the absence of fear, but it's like the just being in that is more important than the fear. I did a thing. I had taken a terrible fall at Snowbird a few years ago, and it was really icy, and also it come in where we had no visibility, and I just couldn't stop. Never had that experience where I just kept flipping and flipping and flipping and flipping, and you know, it was. And so the next year, it was I don't remember why, but maybe it was the end of the season or something, but I didn't get a chance to go to that run again. And I had so much fear going, so much. And I go, hey, courage is not the absence of fear. Let's just focus one turn. And I took, and I, you know, my knees were shaking because of how bad that fall was. And it was a straight shoot, you know, and I just took one turn, then I took another turn, and then exactly what you talked about. Now I'm just in flow. I'm just in the joy of being there. And it felt so good at the end. But if I hadn't faced my fear, I would have never had that opportunity of, wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just, it is what it is. We do the same thing in business though.
Yeah.
And you know, we have these intuition. We all have it, but most of us don't have faith enough or trust enough to act upon that intuition. If you know, and I can tell when I have intuition, is it fear guided or is it divinely guided?
Yeah.
I know the difference now. And I know when it's heavenly, I just got to act. Even if I go, I was speaking in India. Here's it. Okay. I'm in the front row. There's about over 3,000 people there, and it's being televised. So it's hundreds of thousands of people there. It was the World's Women's Wellness Congress. I'm the next person to speak, and I'm in the front row, and I'm already mic'd up, and they're going to have me, you know, introduce me. And they had big screens because it was a big audience, and they had a little intro who I was. And all of a sudden, I do a little prayer before I do anything. And it said, he said, start from the back of the room. What? Start in the back of the room?
Yeah.
But I have so much faith and trust. I don't know why. Kathy was sitting next to me, my wife, and I said, I'm going to start in the back of the room. She goes, what are you talking about? I said, well, you know. And she goes, oh, that's okay. That's interesting. Yeah. So I go to the back room. I see a table. I get on the table. They're showing the film of introducing me, right? And all of a sudden, you know, no one shows up. They got lights and TV cameras all on stage and no one's there. And I start talking and they, you know, the whole crowd's like, what's going on? Finally, someone somehow whipped around and saw me standing on this table back there. And I'm just doing it. You know? But I'm energized because, hey, I'm being guided to do this, and I have the guts to do it. I don't know what I'm doing it for, but this is what I'm doing. So I'm back there, and after I got to a certain point, I jumped off the table, and I go to walk up to the front of the stage, and all those in the back all came and all wanted to touch me. I didn't know what that was about, but I'm kind of walking through, and I finally get on the stage. Man, I'm on fire. Kathy would say that's the best talk I've ever given, but I was so on fire. After I gave the talk, this woman who was there goes, "Oh my God, I've never seen that done. That was so smart. What made you think of it?" Because in India, and you're from there, I guess, he goes, you have first class, second class, and third class. So the third class was sitting in the back. You made them all first class. I went, "Oh, that's cool." She goes, "You didn't plan it?" I go, "No, I didn't know why I did it.
Yeah.
But that's really cool."
Yeah.
She looked at me like she thought I was crazy.
Yeah.
But that's where we get so many incredible, wonderful gifts if we allow ourselves to open to those gifts.
So, okay, this is a great segue. No, but you say opening to those gifts, because I'm a man that I try to live by intuition as well. And it's led me to some amazing adventures and things that I never would have thought possible. But I'm like, wow, well, here's where I'm at because of this intuition, right? So how does one develop that and also act upon that? Because that's a big part, I think, of breaking through that invisible barrier you're talking about, right? Yeah. That courage. So what do you think?
Yeah, well, it's just like we talked about earlier. I on my training ground, my laboratory was on the sports field, right? And you have a scoreboard. But just like anything else, it's practice. What do you do daily to practice diving into that? I do where I get quiet. I have a 5-step process that, again, literally I was sitting in my office one day and I said, "God, you guys, this works pretty good when I ask.
Yeah.
Can you give me something that will change my life forever in a positive way?" And the 5-step process came to me that day. Said, "Do it for 40 days. In the Bible, so funny is everything's 40. I don't know why, 40. But it's 40. Yeah. So I said, "Hey, I'm in 40 days." It was so incredible. I started writing every day because the last part you get your mind out of the way and then you write. And the wisdom that I started writing was like off the charts. And then it just kind of carried on. And after the end of 40 days, it's like, well, why would I stop it? Yeah. So I kept going. And one day I missed. And Kathy, I swear to you, she goes, "You didn't do the process today, did you?"
She knew.
Yeah. I said, "Well, no." And she goes, "Yeah, you go do the process and then we'll talk." Yeah. I said, "You know what? Why don't you start doing the process too?" Yeah. So she did. And she's a phenomenal writer. But it just gets your mind out of the way. So if you want me to give you, I have a beautiful PDF that just I give out to people so they can learn a practice to tap into that wisdom. And the more you do it, the more trust you gain.
Yeah.
And if I don't do it on a consistent basis, I can fall, kind of prey to the outside
programming, if you will.
And the nerves and the emotions that block you from your greatest good. But when I do it, any challenge I have, I go do the process. And it's like, oh man, I'm so glad I did that. I've even said, why didn't I think of that? Yeah. Well, it's coming through me.
It's coming through you.
But it's a process. So I do have if you want, I can tell you the 5 steps here.
Give us the 5 steps now.
So the first thing I do is I'm a big believer that God created nature for us just to really, really tap into. There's an energy there. So you've been to my house. I have over 200 trees. I've got a stream. I've got waterfalls. It is nature just yelling at you.
Right.
And I go out and you don't have to have that. You can do it anywhere, but find 3 things in nature that you can kind of just connect to and really see it in a deeper way of seeing it. There's little things I've out in my yard. I go, God, I hear every day. I've never seen that. Right. But what it's doing is closing down a lot of your thoughts. You're getting just focused and there's an energy that's going back and forth in that. So then the second thing I do is then I sit down and I circle myself with what I call a divine white light. Darkness, if it comes into the light, is light. It can't remain. So it's a protective barrier I put on myself. And then I take all my loved ones and I just go through a process and see them and then circle them with the divine white light. So all of them. And then sometimes if I'm having a difficult time with someone, I'll circle them with the divine white light. And so that's step 2. Step 3 is then I just go into really focus on everything I'm grateful for. There's a power in gratitude. It's amazing. I can have the most stressful thing going on. But all of a sudden you get into gratitude and it's like, what was that thing that was stressing me? Because you become, it just, you take on everything so differently. So that's step 3. Then step 4, part of the game ready part here is I do a visualization technique that I do with athletes, but I do it with myself. I see myself, first of all, I set intentions, 3 intentions. Those are focus points. Then I close my eyes. I go through a gate and I'm in a place I love in nature. And I take some deep breaths to bring that energy in. Then I go to the next gate and then I see myself dealing whatever it is I need to deal with. Whether I'm going to play tennis, see myself playing in that state where I'm just focused on the movements and the flow of it, you know, so that, because there's a lot of distractions going into any kind of competition or life.
Completely.
And after I do that, I come back to nature, rejoice in it, be lit up in it. I go and I see this stream and I drink from that water. You know, Jesus said, drink from this water, you'll never thirst. So it's like, wow, I'm alive, ready to go. So then I step through the first gate and I always have a pad of paper with the date. And now I just open up and if I have a question, I write the question and the answer I start writing it.
Yeah.
Or sometimes I don't have a question. I just let it go wherever it's going to go. Mine, and you don't have to do this. You know, this is just what I do. It's just all of a sudden, the first thing it goes is, Jesus is here. Go ahead. You know, and boom, I start going. Now, I don't tell everyone that.
Listen,
but now,
here's the thing. I do stuff like that all the time in my own way, but it's cool because it's like the way Jesus taught you and the way Jesus taught me is totally perfect for you and it's totally perfect for me. And I also go into nature. I have a spot that I go into that no one else is around. That was one of my requirements. It's like, I don't want to be around a single other person. I just want to be me and nature and God and being able to connect in that way.
Your Thoreau moment too.
What's up? Yeah. And it's this beautiful moment when you can experience connection with the divine. You know, one of the things I mean, expecting this podcast to go here, but you know, we're both spiritual people and I'm happy to talk about these things. I remember there was this day in California. I was living there in 2009 and I was having a really, really good day. And I don't even know what was so good about that day, but it just felt fantastic. I remember coming home so alive. And again, there wasn't any big, huge like miracle. I just felt so good. And I wanted to say a prayer of thanks to God because like he was the one that provided all these things for me. And I wanted to like give gratitude to that. And even then I stopped. I just stopped myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't give thanks enough. I mean, I honestly cannot give thanks enough because the amount that I felt blessed by him far superseded any words I could say of gratitude. And I'm like, well, what can I ask him for? I mean, I don't need to ask him for anything. I have it all, you know? And then one question popped into my brain. And I'm like, why have I never asked God this? But I've never asked him this. So I said in prayer, I'm like, Heavenly Father, how are you doing? You know? And it was as if all of heaven just stopped. And it felt like everything was on pause. And the only thing that mattered was that prayer. And I remember Heavenly Father turning to me, he's like, what? And I'm like, how are you doing? And I said, listen, I have everything. Like I literally cannot think of a single thing to ask for. I can't thank you enough. I mean, everything you've given me is beyond thanks. But I never got the chance to ask you how you're doing. And so at that moment, I felt him melt. Like a father would melt when a child would come up to him and ask, you know, how they're doing. And I just felt him melt. And he's like, my children normally they don't ask me how I'm doing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I want to know, tell me, you know. And it was like spent the next hour or so with me not asking for a single thing other than just listening. I'm like, no way. What else happened? You know, and it was just so exciting. But it was a beautiful moment that I had where in that time, in that space, it felt like time became completely irrelevant, you know, and all that mattered was this connection, right? And I also learned at that moment, hey, you know what? Together, like you can go and do dreams and have all these visions and all these things like that. But I always say, when you're co-creating with God, one of the things you realize is kind of one of the things you said already is you're already whole before you begin.
Yeah.
And when you realize you're already whole before you begin, you don't need anything outside of you to fulfill you. You're already whole.
Yeah.
So why would you need anything outside? So in that case, then the goals that you have are more geared towards just producing joy and to sharing like goodness with other people, because you're like, I don't need anything for me, so how can I help you and how can I bless you? And I find that when I have goals like that, it's way more fulfilling than asking for like a car or like a house or something, for me anyway,
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well,
you know.
here's the best part of that story for me, what you just said. You did it through a great day. I came to it when I was 19 through a car accident where I was killed in the accident. I don't know if I've ever told you that.
You did not tell me this, no.
And so I had what you had, and I was above this body down below.
You had like a near-death experience
I
type
never
of thing.
talked about it. For 19 years, I never told a person because I couldn't deal with it. Kathy was the first one I told 19 years after the accident. And then recently I've been asked to, those somehow I've opened up and talked about it more. But what you just described is what I had while I was out of my body.
Okay.
It was this conversation. And then I had a choice to either come back in or, that body's here and they come and go all the time. Mm-hmm. I made a choice to come back in. And that's where, the car was laying on top of me. I had flown out of the car and then the car landed on top of me. And that's where in the ambulance trip, they took me to a hospital and many broken bones, bleeding internally, very serious. And then they transferred me to Oak Knoll Naval Hospital because my dad was the chaplain there. And that's where they send all the guys my age in Vietnam when they get blown up. That's the hospital they take me.
Wow.
So that took me there. And in that ambulance ride, a true life miracle happened. I don't really talk about it. I'm funny. You opened the door by just you explaining what you did. I went, oh, how cool is that? He did it without having to die to experience it. I had to go to the other side to tap into what I had now tap into. But I resisted it. Oh man, I just wanted to be normal. I thought, I'm an athlete. I can't be thinking like this.
Yeah.
I can't be doing this. At the time I was, scholarship in football and baseball. But that's what turns me towards tennis, is I needed to learn to walk and run again. And one thing led to another. And fortunately for me, it was very naive of me, but I thought that since I was a football and baseball player, I was a better athlete than the tennis players. It wasn't true, but I believed it enough that I won matches that I should have never won. Right. Really, in all reality. But I was tougher mentally because of that. But then when I went on the pro tour, it was like, uh-oh. Yeah. These guys are really good athletes. What was I thinking? Right. And so you had to readjust. Luckily, by that time, I continually gained my physical skills at tennis. And I worked hard to do it. But, really, that's how you do anything. I had a hit on the radio. Well, how did I do it? Because I was bad until I was good. Yeah. I worked it and then surrounded myself with greatness. Yeah. And I was fortunate. I was always keeping my eyes open to, and tennis was, to be honest with you, it was a gift for me to be able to get connected. My record, there wasn't anyone in this studio that wasn't a multi-platinum artist other than me. Mm-hmm. And my producer had 70 top one number. I mean, these monster hits. And so I surrounded myself, and luckily I had prepared myself all the way for that opportunity.
Dude, I'm telling you, it's unbelievable, right? It's unbelievable when you have for me, I think the greatest mindset change, which is what you had in that near-death experience, right? Yeah. Where you realized, oh, wait a minute, I am not alone in this, and that I can start having a different type of relationship, and that relationship can kind of dictate the course of my life. And it's interesting because, I'm not a professional athlete. I'm an actor, and I would like to say I've done a bunch of fun movies and projects and things like that. And it's been great because acting for me is just a vehicle. That's what it is. It's a vehicle for me to develop the relationship with God, right? And I think anyone, whether it's athletes, in fact, the other day when we were playing tennis, Ben and I were having this conversation, and because he said, when as an athlete, I have to be hyper present when it's time for me to play. I'm fully there and I'm fully praying. And he's playing, and he says, I think that's the same with you as an acting. I'm like, absolutely. The moment they say action, it's like Sharon disappears, and suddenly I'm in the zone and I'm focused. And there's something about that I think is just so powerful. But I feel like you haven't thought about this.
Well, I have to. It's pretty funny.
You have to.
So remember, because you said all of a sudden, you're a little intimidated, right? We're going to now start the game. I said, hey, You're an actor. Play the role of a professional tennis player.
Yeah.
Tap into that role.
Yes.
I remember me telling you
I do
that.
remember that. And I still failed. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. You guys, I had a bad back. That's what I say. All right. So I want to like change the topic a little bit, but it's kind of more along what we were talking about earlier. Okay, the Lemonade Stand Stories podcast is all about people's lemonade stand stories, how they were able to make lemonade. But in order to make lemonade, they first had to be dealt lemons, right? So I guess, I mean, we talked about the car accident, but was there any moment in your life that was a significant lemon?
Oh, big lemon. Huge lemon.
Okay. Tell me.
So when I was, I guess, 36, it seemed like everything I touched was golden. Whatever. And I owned at the time, in partnerships with my family, and that I owned 160 acres in Rancho Santa Fe, which is one of the wealthiest communities there is, and then 26 acres on the coast in Cardiff.
Wow.
I mean, unbelievable, right? At a very young age. So I thought I had everything. And I signed personal guarantees. What's a personal guarantee? I don't know. And it was with the bank that I actually banked with, which, we learned never to do that again. But anyway, interest rates, construction loans went up to 22%. So now no project would work. So the way you worked it back then is you put as little money into the property as possible. Then you take out a construction loan, build the project, and then you take a long-term financing. That's how it all works. And properties are just going up like crazy. And back then, this was in San Diego, they were going up 100% a year. It was crazy what was happening. Then boom, the bust happened. And now interest rates are 22%. With loans coming due, we couldn't pay them. Mm-hmm. So my personal guarantee, I guess it does mean something. I literally went to the bank, and back then we didn't have ATM or anything like that, to write a check to get cash, because Kathy and I had just started dating, and we were going to a movie and dinner and a movie that night. I had no money. It was completely cleaned out. Mm. So I hear at 36, completely cleaned out. And I'm like, what do I do? I mean, oh my God. I called Kathy. I said, Kathy, we can't go to a movie and dinner tonight. I don't have a cent to my name. She says, so why can't we go to a movie and dinner? I said, you didn't hear me. She says, I work. Why can't I pay it? And I'm like, that's kind of humble pie. But then I thought, wait a minute. You like me for me? It's not for all the stuff I have and all the stuff, because I have nothing. Yeah. And fortunately for me, it was like, wow. It made me look at life differently. And the fact that she was there for me, I think I was always remember that pushing to prove yourself? Yeah. I was always having to accomplish this, and it's what I had that made who I was.
That was your identity.
Having the slate clean, I have nothing.
Right.
And you still like me? Wow. I wonder if I can fall into that where I like myself at that level.
Yeah.
So that was really the greatest gift I was ever given. I mean, I know it sounds funny, and it was challenging. I'm not saying it wasn't challenging,
right?
But I look back and go, man, I'm so blessed that happened, because I looked at life differently. I probably would have never married Kathy. Mm-hmm. I would have never been able to act in the movies I was in. I would have never had a song on the radio. All things that I'm really proud of today and really glad, because hey, when you're broke, you're going, well, what the heck? Why not?
Yeah.
Let's just go for it. And the fact that we're together now 41 years later and have 4 incredible kids, I mean, that's
a miracle, man.
Amazing blessing. So you want to talk about a lemon?
Yeah.
Yeah. Try to lose everything. I don't suggest it for everyone.
Yeah.
It is challenging, but it taught me that, money's only money.
Yes.
And it gave me a freedom too to go after things that maybe I would have never gone after. What the heck?
Yeah.
I've lost everything, and I've come back from losing everything. So yeah, let's go. But I put everything into it.
Yeah. Dude, I love that, man. I mean, I remember in 2014, I looked at my bank account because I was living in LA and all those things, and it just was not working out over there. And I think I had like less than $200 in my account, and I'm like in LA, and I'm like, oh no, what have I done? What bad choices have I made? But I remember I was like hustling and like trying to like look at every job opportunity I possibly could. Just nothing felt right, and I didn't have a Kathy at the time. But I had Jesus, I had Jesus. And I remember that evening praying, and I said, you know what? I've been trying to make money my life. And it's like, turns out money's not life, your life, So what can I do in this situation to get back on my feet? And he's like, Sharon, just wait till tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, come on, give me something else. Come on, I want more. And he's like, no, just wait till tomorrow. So then very next day, I was back on it, on the computers, hustling, trying to find some jobs. And then I'm like, wait a minute. No, you told me to wait on you today. I'm here. I apologize for even being frantic. And at that moment of prayer, a friend reached out to me and he was like, hey, I know this is going to sound so random. What are you doing for work right now? And from that message to like a couple months later, I'd acted in 3 separate projects. One was a movie, one was a TV show on HBO, one was a national commercial for Wendy's. I flew to Hawaii, did a gig over there. And I did all these different things that weren't really planned at all. And I went from hardly having any money in the end of July to being totally financially okay by October.
Wow.
I mean,
awesome.
Come on, right? Come on. It's like, and that's when Jesus was like, hey, I can flip things around pretty quickly. And I'm like, dang,
that's
you're good.
incredible. Well, I did the same thing when I was the actor,
Yeah.
I fortunately, before I could get into movies and television, I hit on commercials. And it was really funny whenever I was like, oh, how am I going to pay the bills?
Yeah.
I go to the mailbox. A residual.
Yes.
It just kept being supplied.
Yes.
And I finally said, I'm not even going to worry about it anymore. I'll leave it in your hands.
Yeah. He's pretty good at delivering, man. He is. So let me ask you this. What is your greatest source of joy right now?
Family, for one. I mean, I love my family. I have so much joy in being a dad, a husband. That's just like number one. I love where we live. We moved to Utah only because Kathy says, all right, I've lived with the coast for 36 years. I want to live in the mountains. So we've been here 5 years now and love it, love it, love it. But beyond all that, serving the purpose that I was brought on this earth to do, I get so excited working with my clients. It's like, I mean, as a professional athlete, it's really hard to retire because you need that buzz, of competition. Yeah. Well, I've been able to take that buzz and put it into working with my clients and seeing them do miraculous things. Yes. I mean, that is so much, whether it's the athlete or the business, entrepreneur trying to make it, to help them be able to live into their dreams. You mentioned Rennie in Boston for 6 years trying to do that film. And they met me at Sundance. They go, can we hire you? And boom, within 6 months, they're filming. Yeah. But that's the possibilities can happen. Those kind of things, that excites me. I'm like, this is too cool. Yeah. They're doing this movie. It's no longer a dream. They're doing it. And I've done the same thing with those on the business world, because we all have challenges. We all have things that hit us right in the face. And I want to say, I just keep everyone open to new possibilities that, that might not look good. Well, fine. It's this or something better. Let's just go down the better then. Yeah. And I always start each of my calls with any of my clients, give me your 3 wins of the week. And they're like, it's just getting them to focus in on the good that's there, because we all have plenty of challenges, plenty of bad things, but I don't want those to get in the way of the good. Yeah. Now we can grow upon that. And I start shifting their attitude, how they look at everything. And all of a sudden, a major challenge comes up, I'm going, yeah, good. Let's go for it. Yeah. And we find ways to turn lemons into lemonade every day. Yes. Ooh, how do you like that?
Oh, dude. Boom. That was the moment.
Drop the mic.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's attached to this table. You can't do that. That's awesome, man. I love that. Now, with all this joy, what would you say right now is your greatest fear? Or do you even have any? Have you overcome all of those?
That's a good question. I deal with fear all the time. It's not like I don't have things happen. I do. So I don't know if I even know how to answer that, because fear happens. Yeah. And I'm human just like anything else, but there's always a solution that happens. I mean, I live in a very beautiful place that I was directed there because I knew I could change lives. We put on fundraisers there. We do all kinds of different things there because it lends itself perfectly. But it's also very expensive to live there. So it's not like, okay, I've had all this success, so I can stop working. Luckily, I don't want to ever stop working, and I keep getting provided for. So I guess if there's I wouldn't call it if there's a fear that I keep, it's just that I just stay open and stay present and keep allowing myself to always keep asking to Jesus, as now we all talked about it, and I get directed. I don't know why that should be a fear, but that's the only thing that came to me, is because I think that my dad always used to say, do your best, let the good Lord do the rest. And all of a sudden I'm at peace.
That's so beautiful. It's so simple, right?
Yeah.
See, one of the reasons I ask you this is because I feel like, I don't know, not that I'm immune to fear. I'm not, for sure. I do feel like I have a very healthy and very optimistic outlook on life, just because I'm just a happy person. I can't help myself. In fact, I've had multiple relationships where the girls were like, you're just too happy. And I'm like, what do you want from me? I can be miserable, but I don't want to. I'd rather choose this life.
Yeah.
But what I've noticed is there's a lot of people suffering a lot of heavy things right now. And there's a lot of people that are like really going through fear and worry and stress. Look, since 2020, since COVID to now, I think I've lost almost 20 people to death.
Wow.
COVID took a lot of their lives. Suicide was really high.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so people are really dealing through really, really heavy stuff right now. And I was trying to figure out, how do I stay more empathetic and compassionate and help those that are going through something that heavy? Because, people like you, people like me, Rachel Brooks Smith is another person, just like an optimistic beam of light, right? And so it's so fun to be around each other, because it's like we jazz each other up. We're like, oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But then when I step outside and I start talking to people and I hear what they're going through, it's like really heavy stuff. And there's like a lot of fear. And I didn't even realize like how bad it is. But just even in September alone, I think I lost 4 people.
Wow.
Two were like from high school, or 5 actually, and multiple of them were suicide. So when this type of stuff happens, you're like, okay, things are not okay with everybody. And as much as I want to say, hey, be positive, be happy and stuff, sometimes that's not the right solution. So what do you think, like, for people like that?
Well, I think understanding, maybe more than optimistic, is understanding. To you're not going to be able to feel their pain completely, but understand their pain. And then just, for me, I just ask for divine help for me to give that person whatever I can. And that's all I can do. And if I try to go beyond that, then I fall into prey of depression and everything, and that's not who I want to be. And I don't think I can be as good of influencer to people's lives if I fall prey to it. But don't judge them.
Yeah.
Just, be a helping hand, be that loving source. Hope is so important in our lives. And if we lose our hope, what do we have? Hope and faith. So I just try to do my best to keep giving those hope and faith. I did a thing. I had a client that, because of what you just talked about, started, it's called Journey's Dream, a foundation. Journey was a young college. He was a 5th year at Michigan State, and he jumped off a 6-story parking garage. And so they were dear friends of his. And so he started Journey's Dream. And he asked me to coach him, and I was coaching him. He was a successful business guy. And I said, well, how big do you want it? Do you want it like, he's out of Chicago, He says, no, I want the world to know. I said, all right. And this is how I go. We got to go to Novoland then. And I got quiet and said, all right, we're going to Soldiers Field. We're going to rent Soldiers Field. It's like, okay. I mean, I don't stop at anything, because in Novoland,
there's no limitations.
Yeah.
Why would you stop?
There is something that will come up. And I said, do you know any connections to the Bears so we can do this? And I thought, oh, well, my son, when he played professional football, his offensive coordinator was the quarterback when they won the Super Bowl. Oh, that's someone I can talk to. But then Mark goes, well, I can't remember the name of the player, but they had just retired his jersey. So big time player. He says, well, I serve on his board. Well, let's do this. And we find out we do get it all set up. We could do it. And then I called it Soldiers, we're doing it at Soldiers Field because we're soldiers of hope. It's going to take an army to service this hope that we need to do. So it ended up being an amazing event, but it would have never happened if we would have limited ourselves to like, how in the world is that going to happen? We just said, all right, let's start. What could possibly, if that's what we need to do, and we got ABC to cover it, we got a lot of different things. So it sparked their foundation to start making a difference in this world for that very reason. So I've done 2 fundraisers at my home for that foundation, and that's about all I can do is what I can do, what I can control, and try to be the best I can at it.
You know, it's interesting, right? Because when people live in that state of depression and stuff, they, like you said, they don't have hope. They're in a state of hopelessness because they feel like everything is out of their control. And I like what you were saying of like, hey, I can only do what I can do, right? And sometimes maybe even being that is like, hey, just getting up out of bed. Let's just practice getting up out of bed. How does that feel? How does that feel like to just stand up and to like just walk around a little bit knowing like, hey, I got a victory because I got out of bed, right? Because the truth of it is like, for God, like all those tasks, like we don't have to like save this entire world. Like even just getting out of the bed and going out and saying hi to your neighbor, that's a huge victory.
Every little thing.
Every little thing.
When I said about the 3 wins earlier, sometimes I don't know. Did you get out of bed today? Are you feeling healthy? All right, we'll go to that level, whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly.
When I wrote my first book, I was all uptight. Because I went to Barnes & Noble and they had them in the windows. And that's a pretty cool thing, right?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Total display of all the books. I've never been an author before. I'm going,
sweet.
Sweet. And then it kind of hit me like, and then the LA Times, this is in LA, on the calendar section, I was the front page of it talking about the book. I'm not going, that feeling, right? But then the day that I'm supposed to go to the Barnes & Noble and give this talk, I had hired a violinist. My dad played the violin. I just like that, music. I always have music. You know that with anything I
got
do.
You now.
I always do. Yeah. So I see the whole setup with lots of chairs. It was a big Barnes & Noble. And that morning when I woke up, I was just beside myself. Luckily, again, I had Kathy there to go, Dave, get out of your own frickin' way. What did the like, hey, look at me turned into, oh my God, what if no one shows up? I've been in the LA Times. I'm in the front of the store. Nobody, and I just got so uptight and I was being bad to my kids, bad to Kathy. Luckily, she slapped me around and just goes, hey, if one person today, it changes their life, is this book worth it? Yeah. So I just kept thinking as I'm driving there, the power of one person. All I need is one. I don't care the violin player is speaking to one, and I'm speaking to one person, right? I get there early. I'm going up the escalator, and this gal's behind me. She goes, oh, hey, are you here to see the author? I said, I don't know how to answer that. I've never been the author. And I went, I can't just say no. I said, I am the author. She goes, oh, your book changed my life. It's only been out a week, right? And I'm going, how's that possible? I'm like, I got my one.
You got your one.
And I go
so you
there.
got back down the escalator. You're going, well, I don't need to go to this. I'll leave you.
But it again, and it actually was a big crowd. I was like, oh, wow. So I gave my talk, and then I'm signing books. She comes up, and I go, how do you even know this book existed? She goes, my psychotherapist, who I see, told me this book would change my life. I went, a psychotherapist told you this book would change your life? I'm in shock. I'm like, I can't even talk. I'm like, so I'm just now dumb, signing books and that. And afterwards, I tell Kathy, I said, I got my one. Even though there was a lot of people, I'm like, I got my one. I said, her psychotherapist told her to read the book. She goes, who's that? Who's the doctor she sees? I go, I don't know. She goes, why didn't you ask that? I said, because I was in a state of shock. And so we go to dinner, and we're sitting at dinner at this restaurant, and I look across the restaurant. There's the gal. I said, oh, I went over. I got her doctor's name. I called him the next day going, all right, how in the world did you end up
recommending your book?
And he says, well, I was in Barnes & Noble, and I saw this big display. I went, oh, those kind of things work. I opened it up, And I saw the words on it, I'm here, go ahead. Those are the most important words you could ever tell anybody. And I knew that if she read that, she would make it through in her life. I went, wow. Okay. So that whole tour, I always went with thinking, I'm going with the power of one. I'm not going to get caught up if there's 200 people there, 50 people, or one person. If there's one person, that's what I'm going for.
You know, I met Jeff Goldblum once in like a.
I know Jeff.
You know Jeff, right?
Yeah.
So I met Jeff Goldblum once at like some concert that he was playing because he's an excellent pianist as well.
Yeah.
And there's just this crowd of people, right? Just the sea of people all wanting to say hi. It's Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah,
yada yada.
He's
right?
a funny, crazy guy.
He's a funny guy, you know.
Yeah, he is.
But I remember when we met. I mean, it was a very brief interaction. Like he just shook my hand and we took a picture together and stuff like that. But when he shook my hand and said hi to me, it was as if nobody else mattered but me. Like he looked right at me in my eyes and I looked right at him and he was like, how are you doing today? And I knew he meant it. And I mean, there was throngs of people everywhere, but it was this moment of like just one-to-one. And I feel like that's just how Jesus operates too, right?
Ooh, yeah. Ooh, I like that connection.
Like,
there you go.
Big time, right?
Yeah.
It's always about the one. You know, he will leave the 99 behind to go save the one, right?
Yeah.
And so it's always about the one. And so like you were just emulating in a sense what Jesus was already teaching you, even though you didn't even realize, right?
And that's the whole book is about this relationship. I'm here, go ahead. Who's I am?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Oh,
right?
wow, that's cool. Great, great insight on that. That's awesome.
So okay, I got one final question, and that's it. With all of the wisdom that you learn right now, if you could go back in time to the 19-year-old boy pre-accident, before the accident, what advice would you give that boy?
Accept who you are. You're good enough. You don't have to keep trying to prove to everyone that you're good enough. You know, and it doesn't mean, that you would lose your desire to keep, going out there and being the best you can. But believe in yourself that you're enough. I think that would be the biggest message because I lived too often. Didn't matter what I achieved. It was never enough. Never enough. Never enough. I was never good enough in my eyes. Oh, I'm a world ranked tennis player. But yeah, I'm way back down in the hundreds, right? No. I'm a failure there. Oh, I acted in big blockbuster movies. I wasn't the star. Oh, I fell there. I had a hit on the radio. Oh, one? You failed that too. I mean, that's what I would go back to and say, hey, appreciate who you are. Live fully who you are and keep growing, keep expanding, but accept who you are now. Most of us, the biggest issue I find out there, believe it or not, even with very successful people, is I'm not worthy. And I think I had a big I'm not worthy in me without even realizing it.
I think we all do, right?
Yeah.
That's a beautiful, beautiful message, man. I mean, I remember as a kid always having that feeling of never being good enough, never being good enough. And a huge part of it was the way I was raised, feeling like if I didn't get perfect grades, I wasn't good enough. If I didn't do this, I wasn't good enough. And so I got great grades. But I remember it became a real problem when I was in college and I got 100%. Okay, 100. You can't get better than 100%, right? I got 100% on a test. And it was like a college exam or something like that. And I still beat myself up over it. Like you're like, how can you got 100%? How do you beat yourself up? I found a way. I'm like, well, yeah, it'll never happen again. It was like that's what it was.
Well, now think about,
right?
We talked about Ben earlier, right?
Yes.
All right, so think about these Major League Baseball players that I've worked with. If they are successful 3 out of 10 times, they're probably going to make about $20 million a year, probably going to be maybe even in the Hall of Fame. They're failing 7 times out of that 10, and they're the best. I have to deal with those 7 times failures with these guys. You might not think that exists. It does exist. Right. So it's just like with you, with your 100%, our minds tend to go to
these dark, heavy places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have I don't know how scientifically they did this, like 62,000 thoughts a day. Don't ask me how they scientifically did it because I have no clue, but it's what it is. And 85% of those are negative.
That's a lot of
We got to change that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things that I think I do. Being aware of that, I know that that's out there. So that's where I have to play with my clients to keep bringing them back around so that they have, you're a person that just, you don't have 85%. You're unique. You're very unique.
I feel like that was the pandemic. That's the pandemic. The 85% negative thoughts. Because I do feel that, and I do see that a lot, and it's interesting. Even my own family, I can see these thoughts that my parents have and things like that. And I often wonder, I'm like, how is it possible? Like, I remember my dad, and bless his heart, he's such a good guy, and we're still so close. But I remember when I was younger, he would always like say things that were like kind of putting me down, or not putting me down, but making me feel like, oh, I can't achieve this. I can't do this. I can't do that. When I decided to become an actor, I was, one of the reasons why I felt like I was going to succeed was because I knew my dad knew nothing about that industry. Because then I was like, okay, I may have a fair shot because I don't have to hear any negative influences of what to do, what not to do, right? And then I was like, oh, this is working out. I'm actually succeeding. And he was like kind of blown away as well. And I remember thinking, wow, it really was a mindset issue, right? It really was all about that. And I needed to have God like reframe my mind a little bit and see what is possible versus, oh, how are the many ways I'm going to possibly fail, right?
Right.
But I love that message of accept who you are. And I wish people can listen to this podcast can realize that right now, just because of the understanding of God in your life, you can know that nothing you do in life right now is going to be greater than who you already are.
That's such a powerful statement. One night in the middle of the night, as you know, I'm telling things that I don't normally talk about.
This is what I talk about all the time.
Take the Bible. Let's have a discussion with the Bible. And there's a verse I read said, do not be wise in your own eyes. And he goes, no. Be wise in your own eyes because I'm with you the whole way. Oh, okay, that's different.
That's a little bit of a different message.
Bit different.
Yes. And he always tells me, he's like, Sharon, go and do whatever you want. Just take me with you. I'm like, oh, amen. I'll do that. But no, listen, I love these type of things because it really helps us reframe and understand what the nature is of who we really are and what the truth is of who we really are. And I feel like when we can unlock that part of ourselves, it's like we're completely nobo, all the time. Because it's like, well, that's what we are. We're limitless. Let's experience that limitlessness of us,
Well, even in the Lord's Prayer, it says, as earth as it is in heaven. How many people really pay attention to that line?
No, that's true, right? That's very true. Because it's like, if that was the case, earth would look a lot different, right?
so we make that decision. It's a mindset. I'm living heaven in life right now. That I picked up on that. I went, oh, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
On earth as it is in heaven. That means that we don't have to die to get there. You didn't have to die to have that day, did you?
No. In fact, and it's funny because it was funny. A friend of mine was asking me like, what makes you suffer the most? And I'm like, honestly, and I'm not being arrogant when I say this, and I was telling her, I just feel I suffer the most when I know that people aren't enjoying life the way I do. Like that really makes me sad because I'm like, man, I just exceptionally enjoy life. I really do. And I'm like, wow, but how do I share that with other people? And I think the key is
being who you are.
Is being who you are, like living as if you're in heaven right now.
There you go.
And as you do that, you kind of spread that joy and that aliveness to other people, right?
You're living it and breathing it. I was going to be 10 minutes late. I saw my GPS. I called you and said, hey, I'm going to be 10 minutes late. And he goes, awesome, that's great. Yeah. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's so great about it? He says, well, I'll meditate and even get more focus for our call. I'm going like, okay, there you go, buddy. Well, that's living it.
Meditating was me eating another Krispy Kreme. So that was great. Well, thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate you taking the time and like coming on this podcast and like just sharing your insights and your wisdom and like the idea of like changing your mindset and the ability to do so. And what's cool is it's not just etheric ideas. Like you're living proof that this actually works. Your whole life is living proof that it actually works. And it's amazing.
That's really important to me.
Yeah.
Boy, this sounds negative. I don't mean to be negative, but there's so many out there preaching something, but they're not living.
They're living in a van down by the river.
And I'm just saying, man, I don't want to be a hypocrite. If I'm going to teach something, I got to live it. I've got to be brave enough to do it.
Yeah.
Not just speak it.
You've got to experience it, experiment with it. Well, thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate it. And when does Moonshots come out?
You know what? That's a good question. But just recently, all right, so it's really picked up steam.
Okay.
And it got to land on the right network, the right thing.
Okay.
And I've got an offer on the table. I'm going out to Hollywood to talk to, I mean, this is a multi-Emmy award-winning director who goes, I can't say much about it.
Don't worry.
I wish I could say right now, but I can't. You know, if your listeners, if you put the link in even before it comes out, if you want them to see it,
yes,
give it to them. If it's going to change people's lives, I'm not going to wait.
Yeah.
I'll give you the link. And you just put it there, and they can all watch. There's 10 episodes.
Okay.
But it will be. It's exciting what's happening right now.
That's
it's
awesome.
I'm leaving it up to just guide me, let me go, and it's just happening.
He's basically organizing the whole party. We just get to be the participants and enjoy it, you know? So it's amazing. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Dave.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks so much for listening to the Lemonade Stand podcast, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you use to be alerted when we release new episodes. We'd also love to hear your feedback in the reviews, and if you or someone you know has an awesome Lemonade Stand story, please reach out to us on social media and let us know. Thanks so much, and have a great day.